Greetings, gamers. Tim here again, and yes, I'm using the term gamers again due to a friend saying that he was heartbroken over my usage of us as just role players. While that is generally true, we do also play other games, board games, card games, war games from time to time, and the like. It's mostly role playing games that I and my groups tend to focus on. Now, this is not a very long video today. I mostly wanted to talk about 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons since it's the first of the year. All three Dungeons & Dragons core books are out at last: the Monster Manual, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Player's Handbook. And in general, I did not believe that D&D would ever bring me back after my fallout with my burnout with 2nd edition and my fallout with 3rd edition, because 3rd edition wasn't what I wanted at all for Dungeons and Dragons. And then 4th edition sounded like it might be, and we tried it, and we were not very interested in continuing after the first time we played it. 5th edition, on the other hand, seems to have stuck quite well with my particular group and group of friends, and we seem to be doing pretty good, just in general enjoying it. Now, it's not perfect. There are some things I would have left out or changed. For example, I wouldn't have had 3 arcane spell classes. I probably would have only kept the wizard, just preference. I don't think you need to have different juggling style spell casting systems in one, especially a core book. Although it does tend to balance against the fact that there are 2 fighter focused classes, 2 hybrid fighter that have a little bit of magical oomph to them, the paladin and the monk, and 2 rogues, and so on and so forth. At least closer. I would have probably had a balanced package of all, like 2 fighter types, 2 hybrid types, 2 rogue types, 2 wizard types, rather than 3. But I'm not sure I would have had those particular. I don't much care for the warlock or the sorcerer as they're presented, because to me, you can just say, oh, you're born with your magic, use the wizard, or you're born with or you've made a pact with somebody, use the wizard. You don't need a special class for those that are using still the same arcane spells. Now, to be fair, warlock does have some differences, and sorcerer does have some differences in this edition that actually make them, in my opinion, more worthwhile to have in the core book as well. So it's an acceptable compromise, I guess you would say. I don't much care for those classes, but they are doing something unique enough on their own to feel like they actually deserve to be included. Spell points for the sorcerer. Warlock has its packs that are not just spell stand-ins. Now, it's been a long year for me. Quite considerably. It was not a great year overall. It was not as bad as 2013, but 2014 was a bit less stellar than I expected. I did not get as much done as I wanted. I've had a lot of turmoil in my family and life events in general, but not as bad as compared to 2013. But since today is the 1st of 2015, here's to looking up. We're going to try and make it a good one. My biggest problem has been health problems overall that have kept me from writing, mostly involving sleep issues. I either sleep too much or I can't seem to sleep enough. That is, I'm sleeping a lot and not getting any rest. So it's frustrating because, believe it or not, I don't want to spend all day in bed or all night in bed. I want to be able to spend, 6, 7, maybe even 8 hours in bed, and then have the other, hours to write, draw, paint, whatever happens to come to my mind that is necessary for me to do to stay busy. Research is a lot of it these days, because I do a lot of research in comic books, in back issues, in superhero fiction, in historical fiction, and folklore, in order to make my games better. For example, I have a stack, I would probably say, of about a dozen space opera books, from classic 1930s, 40s, and 50s space opera to later 70s space opera and space opera television and DVDs, which are a separate stack. I don't have a lot of those, but I'm building those up. But as well as modern interpretations of the space opera premise that I am using in general to get a feel for my space opera game. All three of them that I'm working on. I've got a retro one, a space opera game. I've got a horror space opera game. It's a little more or less, I guess you would say, space opera in the terms of that space opera has come to mean. But it is mostly about the people dealing with the dark things that exist in their reality as opposed to some sort of singular technology that we're extrapolating to affect the human macrocosm that a lot of harder science fiction tries to do. So that's why I use the term space opera. The retro space operas, die-hard ray guns and bubble helmets are not necessarily bubble helmets, but similar enough to count. And the third one is a wusha, or wushu, superhero, not superhero. I babbled on, so I'm not going to go back and edit that out. But a more over-the-top space opera setting based on Chinese mythology. So there is a bit more research that I need to do there. It will not be out. I will not have it finished by the end of next year. I'm hoping to have the horror space opera game done and the other space opera game almost done, and a couple other things on my plate at least started in more than note form. But it's, as I said, it's been one of those years. Again, my sleep issues have made me very unenergetic about things, so I'm up relatively early for morning. It's 4 in the afternoon, and I'm up early. No, lately, I've been sleeping from like 10 in the morning to 6 at night, and then being awake the rest of the night, but it's still not enough rest, and occasionally I'd end up taking a nap, or I would sleep 9 to 4, get up until 7 or 8, sleep until 10, and then be up the rest of the night. So it's not a fun experience, believe it or not. Sleeping a lot, not a good thing. In terms of new games that came out this year, I didn't pick up a lot. I picked up the Doctor Who hardcover, the limited edition, which is actually a lovely book. I love the photographic bits in the book. It's very well laid out. It's very clearly done. I picked up Dungeons and Dragons, which may be the reason I didn't pick up a lot else, because that's 3 books that came out towards the end of the year that I picked up other things. I picked up a couple other things here and there, mostly PDFs, but nothing really wowing. I did pick up Beyond the Wall and Other Adventures, I believe. It's called. It's a D&D OSR style game that focuses on classic, I guess you would call it teen or young adult fiction in many ways, where you have a group of heroes from a village who go off to do something, but they always come back to their hometown. It's a very intimate fantasy kind of tabletop game, and it does it using an engine based off, of course, older versions of D&D. And it's really nice. I like the village creation system. I like how you're playing young adults that are just coming into their own. It fits the whole zero to hero kind of feel of those kinds of games. So it works, you know. It's just one of those things I picked up, I've been reading through and liking a lot. And it's made me evaluate my fantasy gaming, because when I run games, I tend to do the big epic thing. You might start in a village, but you may not ever return there because you're out doing big epic things, traveling the world, exploring these worlds that I've created. While at the same time, I prefer, in general, to play a little bit these days a more, as I said before, intimate setting where we get to know the people in the village or the nearby area, the nearby farms, and we interact with them a little more. And even if we were playing adult heroes, I kind of like that concept quite a bit, in that they have day jobs, they have people they love and care for, family, friends, etc. Because to me, it gives more role-playing interaction than the going out and the big epic hero thing. It doesn't have to, but it's just a trend that I have noticed in my own games, which I may have to rectify in the long run. But I like the interacting with the same people repeatedly. Yeah, sure, you get to meet a new person, a traveling tinker. You might go to another village, but I like having the same people come up because that allows you to build established personalities. And it's more common in modern games to have that kind of, most of the time, like urban fantasy, one city. Superheroes, one city. They might go out and save the world, but they're coming back to their hometown. And I kind of like that for fantasy games these days as well. You don't tend to see, traveling the world superheroes very often. I've done it a few times in games. Back when there was a television show called Road Rules on the air, believe it or not, I used that kind of premise to build a superhero game where the heroes traveled from town to town. It was actually more inspired not by that television show, but by the old 70s and 80s TV series where you had the Wandering Hero. That was a fairly popular trope, pretty much. The Wandering Hero, he goes from town to town, solving problems, dealing with often criminals, criminal gangs, whatever. And there were half dozen shows that followed that I'm off the top of my head can name, and there's more than that. There's Knight Rider, the Hulk, Werewolf, the TV series, and there are others that are very similar. I had a half dozen in there, but I'm not sure one of them entirely applies because it's only a vague memory in my head. But that is very much what you get in some tabletop role-playing games, and that was something I was focusing on to do something different with superheroes. But it's very common in fantasy, less common in other genres, and I want to try and reverse that trend and try a more focused, town-friendly fantasy gaming experience. The problem is it tends to be very much that why is the small town centered around so many big things that you want to have in gaming? And unless it's a border town or something else that really should be bigger and just happens to not be the major trade route or something, it can get a little weird if you do it too often. But then again, if you do it, you use the Pendragon's idea of an adventure a year, it might work out. It might work out a little bit better. Anyway, I'm apparently managed to make this short video almost to my normal 15 minutes that I do these videos for. Although I think I can do longer videos. I don't know how YouTube handles that. I'm pretty sure I could probably do a 30-minute or an hour-long video if I really wanted to, but I don't want to go into that much detail and that much babbling because I do babble quite a bit. Anyway, Happy New Year to those of you who are looking forward to it, and those of you who had a great year last year and didn't want to come out of it. Well, it happens. The world passes around the sun, and we are done with that past year. It doesn't necessarily mean the good things will end for you or that bad things will continue. You just have to take each day as if it were a new day, and that is true if it's a new year on top of it as well as if it's not. So I hope yours is good, grand, great, and gaming rocks. So I'll see you here hopefully in a couple more weeks, and we'll do another video.